Lesson 64. Topic: Clarification on certain current issues by Saint Michael and Saint Gabriel. Greetings, brothers and sisters. We are Saint Michael and Saint Gabriel. Certain current events are occurring that need to be clarified. These events are hidden. Only a select few know about them. Among them are the preparations being made for the Third World War to begin in the not-too-distant future, 2 or 3 years from now. The higher hierarchy that governs the planet, which is quite malevolent, wants a small population extinction to maintain its power and to mold the masses of humanity into what they want and desire so that their needs may be achieved. What is happening is that on the eastern front of Europe, in the border regions between Russia, Poland, Ukraine, Bulgaria and Romania, there is a major conflict. This conflict hasn't yet escalated significantly. It's merely a prelude to the subsequent plans. What the shadow government wants to achieve in this geographical area is for the weaponry used in this conflict to become increasingly destructive. They want to see nuclear weapons used, even tactical ones, that might cause little destruction but generate immense hatred. What they want is to provoke people not to want the war to end. The inhabitants of these regions are already completely fed up with the war and have long recognized its futility. What the shadow government wants is for the people of this area to feel the need for the war to end, but to end with a victory from their side. To achieve this, they must provoke the use of weapons of mass destruction, thereby generating widespread hatred toward the enemy. We are fighting to prevent this from happening. The spiritual hierarchy and all spiritual brothers and sisters, whether incarnated or not, are all fighting to prevent this from reaching this point. On the contrary, we strive for peace to prevail, for the people's wishes to be heard by their leaders, and for the war to end. The rulers of this region want the war to continue. They are puppets of the dark powers that govern the planet. Ukraine wants to acquire increasingly powerful weapons and wouldn't hesitate to acquire and use tactical nuclear weapons. Russia is one step away from doing so. You might think the United States is involved in this war, but quite the contrary. The United States wants the war not to end, but to escalate using tactical nuclear weapons. They are merely puppets of the shadow government, and as such, they must act. They will provoke the war to worsen, and they will use every trick in the book to trigger World War III. Be alert. They're going to try to negotiate with the leaders of the two geographical areas in conflict. They're going to try to make the negotiations long-term. They're going to move more slowly, and at the same time, they'll be secretly negotiating with the hardliners in each government, trying to plant the idea in their heads that they have to use weapons of mass destruction. Pay attention to the news because this phase is already happening. In the case of another conflict of a certain magnitude, like the one you have in the Persian Gulf, what is happening is that the United States and other countries involved with them have an interest in prolonging the war. That's why the negotiations are going so slowly. Iran, which is also being influenced by the shadow government, also has an interest in prolonging the conflict. In reality, both are puppets of the shadow government, like many other governments, but there is a difference. The United States intends to seize control of the Persian Gulf economy, which it has almost achieved. In Iran, the aim is to maintain the independence of at least a certain sector of the government, which wishes to keep things as they are. We are in the middle of a struggle between two sides, those who want a short war to achieve their objective, and the other side that wants to use the weapons of mass destruction to achieve the objective much faster. We are in the same situation as the conflict you have in Eastern Europe. In less than a year or two, we will see what the trend is, but what we see happening is that the war will stall. It will seem like there will be a peace agreement, but in reality, it will only be a pause. Afterwards, it will be much worse, and with the intention of causing greater destruction on both sides. They want the atmosphere of the planet to become increasingly tense, and for these tensions to lead to World War III. They want this war to start in 4 or 5 years, if not sooner, depending on whether the plans change. This is what the shadow government is seeking, but it wants to do it in such a way that the destruction isn't as massive as it could be, but rather such that it allows humanity to be molded into the interests of the shadow government. These interests of the shadow government are, in short, to produce greater enslavement of humanity, to make people believe everything the governments say, to make them puppets of the shadow government, and to bring those who aren't puppets under the control of the shadow government. They also want to ensure that people lack independent thought, that their thinking increasingly resembles that of the government in their area, and that they are led by what the government dictates. That's why free thinkers who don't believe what government says are so dangerous to them. They are going to try new stratagems to get rid of those who think for themselves. The control of information is going to be much tighter. If you can't stop it before then, you are headed toward a global dictatorship, and in a very short time, at most 3 or 4 years away. Pay attention to the news and try to investigate beyond what the news says. Knowing the truth is the only thing that can save you. The only defense is to grow spiritually and form a strong, united group against the shadow government and its acolytes. Listen to the Father, who only wants your good and your spiritual growth. That's the only thing that can save you. And now, as I don't want to exhaust the medium, until next time, brothers and sisters.